And so at this point, it's all about you taking your 2 actions per turn.
It's a series of rounds, and each round has an investigator phase and a mythos phase. And the app would be like, when you start the game, begin the investigator phase.
Mm-hmm.
And then for the investigator phase, like Mickey said, every player gets 2 actions, and the turn order is whatever the players want to decide.
Yep.
But I don't think you can split actions between people. Like,
No.
I can't do it, then you can do it.
Nope.
Yeah.
You have to take all your actions, and then you decide who goes next.
Yep. All right, so I got a list of the things that investigators can do. I have move, which is move up to 2 spaces. It can't be through walls or impassable things. And you make an evade check if moving out of a space with a monster.
Okay. So, to elaborate on move, and I will put another tile, just because this is in no particulars, just to have another tile to make you, so you can see stuff. Alright, so, spaces in this game are divided by, they make them weird. There's a squiggly line here,
It's not
there's
the
a
same
straight
for
line
all the
here.
tiles.
This is actually a line here, so I'm tracing it because it might be a little bit hard to see. So this room actually has 1, 2, 3 spaces. And this room has 2. So I could move 1, pretend there's a door there, 2. That's my move.
Yep.
Or I can go 1, stop and do something here, and I believe in this game I still have the movement if I want it.
After you do something?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't have to, but I still have the move point available if I want to, with the exception of if you run into a monster.
Right. And then should we do the evade thing, or just show what it would look like? Because the app takes care of that, right?
Of what?
Just having a monster in your space. I mean, we don't really need to.
Well, yeah, if you want to pass it over. So what we were talking about is if I was in this space with this guy, I declare I'm going to take a move action. Before I actually move my guy over, I have to make an evade check with him. If I fail, I still get the action unless the app tells me I can't move.
Right.
Like, it might be like, I chopped your foot off, you're not going anywhere. Something to that effect. Not really, but it does do, sometimes it does foil your plans more than you were hoping for.
As long as you read the app carefully, you'll know whether or not you lose the action or not.
Yes.
Alright, next is explore.
So the explore token are these red ones, okay? So you have to be in the same space as the token. So remember, these are spaces. The room is not a space.
Right.
So if I'm in this space, I can't explore that thing. I have to be close enough to whatever I'm exploring to actually do it. I would look on the app. I would say, where is that on the app? And I would click it with the mouse pointer thing. And then it would tell me stuff.
Yep. You resolve the effect that the app tells you, and then you may move into the explored area for free.
Right.
So if you want to start him back at the beginning and show an example of a turn.
This is driving me nuts that it doesn't have a door. So, I would go 1. That's a move.
His first action is to move, so he does 1 space, he still has 1 left.
I decide I'm going to interact with that explore token. I select it on the app. It tells me I'm taking an action when I do that. I say, yes, I really want to take this action. I read whatever it says. It tells me where I'm going, and now the app will tell me what to place in front of there.
And then it'll tell you how to populate that room as well.
Yeah, it'll probably say, hey, put another explore token here. It could do a number of different things. It might put more, what's in that garbage can, etc., etc. It'll make stuff up and tell you how to populate it. And then, since I did that, as Jeb just said, once I explore it, I can do that, and that is not my second move point. That is a part of the explore action.
Yep. And then if Mickey wanted to, he could use his last move point to move the guy one space more into the room. One thing to note is that the Explore token that Mickey resolved is gone, and I believe it's gone in the app as well. So if you look at the map, it won't be there anymore, so you just take it off. Alright, the next action you can do is search. And for this, you're going to tap the search token in your current space in the app and resolve the effect.
Okay, exactly the same as Explore, except now they're talking about the question mark. So if it was over here, I would tap the question mark, see what it said, confirm that I wanted to do it. And some of this stuff is probably hard to visualize. Trust us.
It's super.
When you
the
see
interface
it,
is really nice.
Yeah, when you see it on the thing, you'll get it. You'll be like, oh, this is kind of cool.
Another action you can do is trade, and for this you can swap, pick up, or drop items in your current space. And this action does not interact with the app.
Right. So this is one of the things that you have to do the bookkeeping for.
Yep.
Basically, it's one of these things. It's like, okay, because honestly, the app doesn't care what you have.
Right.
So
and then
it does in the fact is that the app can tell you to lose something.
Yes.
And then it's the honor system that you actually get rid of it.
Right.
But it doesn't care what you own.
And if you decide to drop an item, what you would do is just place the item onto the space that you're at, and then that way other people can come and pick it up.
Yep.
Another action you can do is interact, and what you do is tap the person or interact token in your current space in the app and resolve the effect. So,
right. So like Jeb just said, it could be a person. The other symbol for interact is the exclamation point. Again, reiterating, the app's going to tell you where to put these things, but you'll click it. It'll tell you what you're doing or what's happening. It will also tell you if it's going to cost you an action or not to continue all the way with it.
Another action you can do is, it's called the component action, and what this is using an action that's listed on an item, and because some of the items actually have actions listed on them.
Yep.
And you do interact with the app for this. What you do is you open the inventory in the app and you find the item and then you click on it.
One of the biggest things that you'll do that with are the spells. Feed the Mind is one of them. It says action. This one actually says you and another investigator within range become focused. Well, that's probably not the greatest example, other than it does cost you in action. I was hoping for a little bit better example, but the point is the card says action. I was hoping for one that...
Like an attack spell?
Yeah, something like that, because the interface that Jeb's talking about, there's a menu in there, and it's very clear on what you want to pick for whatever you're doing.
And then the last action that an investigator can do is to attack. So for attacking, you select the monster in the app, you select the attack type, then you resolve the effect, and you use the buttons in the app to record monster damage.
Right. I don't know if you can... I'll try to talk you through this. I don't know how well you'll be able to visualize it or not, but you can certainly go to a point through game through and you should be able to see it. So if I'm here and I decide to attack this guy, and let's say I have that.
A 2x4.
I have a 2x4. Alright? So this is the card I have. That's the guy I want to hit. So I go to the app, and remember the computer knows what monsters are on the board all the time. So I would go to the menu, I would select this guy, and then it also, where on the section when you're on the monster page or the attack page, whatever you want to call it, there's a list of type of items from your bare hands to all the different components that are in the game. So I look at my weapon and I have a 2x4, and then in italics it's a heavy weapon. So I would look at the screen, I would select heavy weapon. That would bring us into, I think it might even do one more check that says, are you sure you want to attack with a heavy weapon? And then you say yes, and now you are committed to that action because now you're in battle. It will bring up onto this to the screen what happens in the battle, and you will fight the monster based on skill checks, which use these dice. And then, like Jeb said, let's pretend that I beat him. The app's also going to tell you what kind of damage you do. You might need to know that number. It might give you an exact number. All kinds of things. It might give you the number of successes. There's a lot of different ways it might tell you to do the damage. The point is, let's say I ended up doing 2 damage to this guy. Right on the app, there's plus and minus buttons. You hit plus to increase and minus to decrease. And yes, some of the stupid monsters heal themselves.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, anyways, then once you're done with that, you tell it you're done. It keeps track of the damage. When you see this guy again, he's still going to have that 2 damage I put on him. And hopefully you just keep swinging away until he's dead. And that's pretty much how combat goes.
The only other thing for combat is melee attacks are only in the same space. Yep. And ranged attacks must be in range, but you can't do them through walls or doors unless specified.
Range this is kind of like their line of sight in this game, and it's a little bit strange. Because in range, which you also have to know for monsters, is 3 spaces. And like Jeb said, it doesn't go through doors and stuff. Which is very strange since these things are not that big.
Right.
But you can get some long corridors, so whatever. So I can sit in this spot with a ranged weapon and hit this guy. If I'm right here, even though it looks like I can see him through the door,
nope.
Doesn't count. I'm not in range. But he's not in range of me either.
Right. So
it's a good balance. It kind of keeps things simple. It's just when you see some of the stuff in your head, especially when it would be in your favor, you're just like, ugh. But the important thing to remember is its spaces. So if you do have like a long corridor, and this continued a little bit, it would be 1, 2, and then a third space, as long as there was no doors, other doors in that corridor, and then you would be able to hit it. They keep it pretty simple in that aspect.
Yeah.
Just try to remember in range is 3 spaces whenever you hear that phrase.
And then that's it for all the different actions the investigators can take. So once, for our example has 3 investigators, once everybody takes their 2 actions, you're going to click, I believe it says end investigator phase.
Yeah.
You just click that on the app, and then it'll be like, Mythos phase begins, or something like that.
And it does confirm that you really want to do that. It says, are you sure you want to enter the Mythos phase, or are you sure you want to end the investigator phase? I forget which way they put it. But it does double check in case you get click happy.
Yep. And then the Mythos phase, it's pretty much all done by the app. The first thing that happens are Mythos events, and these are just effects generated by the app, and you do what the app says.
And here is a really, this part I think really heightened the game from first edition, because this is where a lot of times the app knowing who's playing the game makes a huge difference, because it will go,
oh, it'll say the name
Carlson
of the character.
Sinclair just got bumped in the head by something he couldn't see.
Yep.
Take a wound. Or something weird like
it's
that.
It's really cool.
It really is cool, because they couldn't do that with the old one.
Right.
Because you didn't, like, it would have to, well, that would have made setup even worse if you had to customize which characters people were going to play. So just, like Jeb said, thematically it's really neat because stuff happens to individuals in this version.
And maybe sometimes nothing happens.
Oh yeah, sometimes you can, Those are the best.
It'll be like there's
yeah.
a rumbling in the walls or something like that.
And then nothing happens.
And then you're like, what?
Yeah, and you're like, quick, hurry, do something, because this can't last forever.
Yeah. All right. After the event happens, the monsters activations are going to happen, and the app takes care of this as well. If there's no monsters, the Mythos phase just ends. So that's always a good thing, but that's not always going to happen. What the app is going to do, it's going to generate instructions on what each monster does. So it'll tell you, move this monster however many spaces towards an investigator, or it might even say the name of the investigator as well. After the monsters activate, it's the horror checks, and the app is going to tell players to make a horror check against a single monster that's in range, the one with the highest horror rating, and players select the monster in the app to check against, and then they resolve it.
Okay. If you didn't catch that, Jeb said that word range again. So it applies to the monsters just like it does to you. So keep that in mind when you're trying to figure out monster movement and stuff. And also, we learned this from reading some stuff on BGG and things like that. Read what the monster does and take it literally. Because we were moving some stuff around a couple times when it shouldn't have been. So you have to, in your mind, sometimes you think that it should move, but really be careful with the wording, because if it's like not within range of anything, it might not be moving. All right, so that being said, and trying to cover the range again, the horror check that Jeb's talking about is another thing where you have to do your own bookkeeping.
Yep.
You have to be, am I within range in a room or in the same space or whatever? You have to be paying attention and or help your teammates and be like, oh, wait a second, you need to do a horror check. Doesn't matter who goes first, because the app's not really keeping track of that. It's just randomly doing a horror check for who's ever clicking the button.
And then that would be the end of the Mythos phase. The app would tell you that, and then it'll be like, back to the investigator phase. And it just keeps going like that until the end of the game, which is...
when you die.
Pretty much most of the time.
Yes, notice I said when you die, not when you might win. I just said when you die.
Yep. So the cool thing about the second edition is that the app keeps the objective hidden. So you don't actually know what you're supposed to do in the entire scenario. You just play, and you're trying to use all the clues to figure it out.
You end up...
yeah.
Like, it's not like you get all the way to the end and you don't know what you were supposed to be doing. But you really do have to try to figure it out. And then you get little things like, oh, I bet we're supposed to be trying to do this.
And then at some point the app will actually be like you need to kill whoever, or stop whatever.
Right.
And then if you complete the task, you win. If you take too long or you die, you die. So that's how the game plays overall. There's additional rules that we will go through just to clear up some stuff. But I think the first thing we should talk about are the dice. So when you attack, or when you do skill checks, or when you do the horror checks, you're going to roll dice, and the results on the dice, we need to tell what each one of them does.
Okay, blank does nothing. The elder sign is a success, and the magnifying glass might be a success.
Yes.
Okay, so real quick, so you know what I meant about the magnifying glass. It's such a huge part of the game. When you, or the app rather, tells you that you've found clue tokens, actually your character might inherently be able to get clue tokens. Anyways, numerous ways to get these. If you have this in your hand and you roll the magnifying glass, you can spend 1 per magnifying glass to turn it into a success. There are parts in the game will tell you that you're not allowed to do that this turn or something to screw you over. But
yes,
in general, you can always do that no matter what kind of check you're taking. I don't know if you're going to say this, but there are also other situations where you can use this to like perform extra actions or stuff like that. So they have a few other uses, but in general, the big use is to turn these things into successes.
Right. All right, so I'll just start reading these off and we'll talk about them. Damage and horror. When you suffer these, you draw the top card of the deck and flip it face up and resolve it. So say Mickey takes 1 damage.
Boom. I take it, I flip it, say, oh, I got a minor injury. It's only a flesh wound. Resolve immediately. No additional effect. Flip this card face down. Boom. That was my whole damage.
And
now
that's just going to sit in front of his investigator card while he has that wound.
Jeb, I picked a different card this time. This was my top card this time, and it came out face up, Jeb.
Uh-oh.
I got a muscle tear.
Ooh, those hurt.
And the flavor text is really fun on these two. When you stand still, the pain is a dull throb. When you move, it's a sharp agony. Keep face up. Roll 1 fewer die while resolving a strength test.
Ooh.
So that's pretty bad.
And that's going to sit in front of Mickey face up with that effect until he somehow gets rid of it.
Exactly.
And you can have a mix of face down and face up wounds. Like,
yep.
There's no real restriction like
right.
that.
Just remember that the face up ones are just as much of a wound as a face down one.
Yep. All right. And then the next thing is becoming wounded. So when an investigator suffers damage equal to their health, they gain the wounded condition and they discard all face down damage. You can only perform move action once per turn now.
Okay. Good time to take a look at an investigator card. Your investigator, their health, their sanity, and their skills, which we did, huh?
In effect as well.
Yeah, and some kind of special ability. Which we went over real quick before, but this is for purposes of showing what Jeb was just talking about. For Carlson Sinclair here, once I get 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If I had 7 and I got hit for 3, the overage does not carry over. Just so you know, once you start fresh with a wound. Okay, I'm at 8. I get wounded. I discard all these.
All the face down. You keep the face up ones.
And there is literally a card in here to remind you. Now I'm wounded. I put that there. And it says you cannot perform the move action more than once each round.
There you go.
And when you have suffered damage equal to your health this next time, you are eliminated.
Yep. I'll get into that in a minute.
Yep.
Next is insane, which is pretty much the exact same as wounded.
Except within the insanity things.
And then once you become insane, you gain the insane condition, discard all face down horror. The back of the insane condition card has a new victory condition for that player.
Right.
So that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, that's we mentioned that real quick too. These insane cards all have something different on the back, and they not only do they change your win condition, they can change how you act during the game, which is a pretty neat thing.
Yep. And then also, like wounded, if you're insane and you gain horror equal to your maximum horror again, you become eliminated.
Right.
Which brings us to eliminated. The second time you get wounded or insane, you drop all your items in the spot you're in, you remove your miniature, and the remaining investigators have a single additional investigator phase to attempt to win, or else everybody loses.
If you're not so super close,
yeah,
you might as well just pick up. If you're not, if whatever you're trying to do isn't within 2 shots of killing or something, just go home.
So pretty much eliminated means like you got to hurry it up or it's over. Skill tests. At some point in the game, the app is going to tell you to do a skill test. You're going to roll dice equal to your skill value. We already said the Elder Sign is the successes. There might be a modifier where you get more or less dice. The minimum amount of dice you can roll is 1. So if something tells you to lose 3 dice and you only have 1 dice, then you still roll 1.
Yes. So inherently on the just for this card, just so you understand, these skills for Carson's strength, he rolls 3. For his agility, he rolls 2. For his observation, he gets to roll 5. For his lore, he rolls 4. For his influence, he rolls 4, and his will is a 3. So for each of those, you just look at the number and grab that many dice. That's then obviously better odds to roll a success with the more dice.
And now the app kind of does this cool thing where sometimes it'll tell you a target number of successes that you need to hit, or it'll just be like, enter how many successes you got.
Yeah.
And then for those, you just type in the number and hit enter, and then it'll give you an effect. And you don't really know what's going to happen, but you kind of assume the more successes, the better the result.
Right. Speaking of the modifiers that Jeb's talking about, that's actually one thing that can, when you first play, can be a teeny bit confusing when they're talking about either adding the dice or the target number.
Yeah.
And that it takes a little bit to get used to. I don't really know how to verbally describe it to you other than to kind of focus on that a little bit in the book. In general, you'll know when it's a target number. Usually an extra die is indicated by a +1. Like strength +1 means I get an extra die. It doesn't mean I get an automatic success or something like that. It's just an aside. You'll see it in the rule book when you glance at it, but I found that to just be personally a little tricky. Not awful, just something that I had to get used to seeing.
The next thing I have are the monsters. They have their information on the token, and ID tokens used to mark unique monsters.
Okay, so I had blabbled about this a little bit earlier, saying I didn't remember which what numbers were what. So all the monsters have the token that slides into the slot, and so this number up here. What's it? Top right?
Yes.
I'm backwards. You gotta help me out, Jeff. All right. So this is the awareness number up here. Okay. And then down here is its horror rating. Okay. And then on the back, in the bottom right corner, is its brawn. And then this could have an ability, could be just flavor text or whatever. But here's more information about that monster. And so basically the awareness, sometimes awareness comes into play. For example, if there's 2 monsters in the room, the one with the highest awareness, if you're trying to evade, that's the one you use. Sometimes the horror rating comes into play, like which one's the scariest. That happens when, let me see, that happens when you're doing a horror check. So if there's multiple monsters, you have to do a horror check against the scariest one. So the one with the highest horror.
Yep.
It doesn't care about the low one, and you don't get to pick. And then brawn is basically how strong he is, and that comes into play with sometimes with the barricades and things like that, on if he's going to be successful or not. The stronger he is, the more successful he has a chance to be in breaking down a barricade that you set up or whatever. The app could even tell you to look at brawn for some other reason too. So those are the stats on the monsters. They all have, well, they're all different, but they all have it in the same place.
Okay. All right, next up are item cards. When you gain them, you place them face up in front of you, and some have a unique back that you can read at any time.
Which I was talking about earlier, the item.
They look like there were 3 or 4 in that whole deck.
So here's a one with a special back, and here's a neat, and they're neat actually because they're thematically pretty cool. But here you got a thing of whiskey. Jeb likes whiskey.
Oh yeah.
All right, and then it's equipment, and it has an action on it, and you can discard up to 2 face down horror, and then you flip this card, so it heals you a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But and when you flip it, now you have a broken bottle.
Oh,
So now you have a weapon.
sense.
So it's really kind of cool.
Yeah.
And that's an example of one of the items that is double-sided. Still keep it in order of alphabeticals.
Yeah. All right. Then spell cards. When you gain a spell card, it'll tell you the name of the spell to gain, but there's multiple copies of it, so you take a random one. And then the key for spell cards is you cannot look at the back of the spell card when you get it.
Right. Because they can be pretty nasty if they backfire.
Right. The back of it kind of tells you how well your spell went off, or if there were any additional effects and stuff like that. So you're not supposed to know what happens until you actually use the spell.
Right. I think the back of some of them actually make you do a skill test too, don't they? Or is that just the attack part of it? Anyway, point is, like here's a few of them. I just set them out so you could see kind of what they look like. Notice on this one that it's actually an attack spell. It's got a range and it's got a damage number on it. Just as an aside, some of these do, they all do like different things obviously because they're different spells. This is what Jeb was talking about. Notice that each of these is a little pile. Yep. So the book says randomly. We always just drew from the top and then shuffled them all back in. So you kind of had a chance to get the same one, but that's just how we did it. We didn't try to be like, oh, I already saw that one, so let's put it on the bottom and make little stacks. I don't know. We felt like thematically it'd be more cool to shuffle them up and never know, maybe you play a game and you got the same thing wrong every single time because you're just not that smart.
Yep. And I believe after you use the spell, once you read the effect of it on the back, it'll say acquire another copy of that spell.
Sometimes, yeah. It says, I think sometimes you burn it.
Yeah, it all depends on what's on the back.
Right.
So there is a chance that you could keep using consecutive spells, whatever. But again, it's not all in one thing.
And when it says acquire another one, that's where it goes back to the randomness.
Yep. Then there are the condition cards, which whenever you gain the condition, look for the card, put it in front of you. Your investigator is now affected, however the condition card says you're affected.
Now we already talked about the wounded and the insane. Those are kind of the those are severe. Yeah, those are severe. Those are like really bad, almost game-ending stuff. Some of the more normal stuff you'll see up throughout the game. There's a stunned. Here's restrained.
Is dazed one of them?
There's dazed.
I remember.
Focused.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's a good one. So, anyways, that might even be all of them. But anyways. Those are conditions, and so keep those in front of you to remind you that there's something wrong with you, or something good. Like the focused is a good one to have, and they tell you right then, and I think they also tell you how you can get rid of it on the card too.
All right. Next up are some features to the game. The first one, barricades. I think this is a barricade, right?
I think
it just looks like a little.
Is that a barricade or is that a stool? Doesn't really matter. They have there's stuff that sits around that for an action you can slide it in front of a door.
And I think
whatever.
It has to. The app tells you where to put the barricade, and the barricade is usually on a space that has a door.
Or something that you can block anyways. And that's where I was talking about the monster's brawn comes into play.
Yep. It takes an action to block or unblock, and you cannot move through barricades, but monsters can destroy it. What it does is it rolls its brawn, and if it has a 2 or higher success, then it destroys the barricade.
That's actually pretty tough, depending on how brawny the monster is. You don't always. I think it's 50-50 on the dice. Well, maybe let's see, blank.
I think it might be 2.
3. There's 3 blanks, so, and it's a 8, right? So whatever that is, 3 out of 8 chance. Is that what I said?
Mm-hmm. You said 3 blanks.
So a little bit better than 50% not to get a blank.
But then they can't use the magnifying glasses either.
True. But we still would roll positive for them, so it doesn't matter.
All right, next up is the darkness token. Where darkness tokens are placed, those spaces
are dark.
You cannot spend clue tokens unless a light source or a fire is in or in an adjacent space. It needs to be in the darkness space or in an adjacent space to the darkness space.
So as you remember, one of the things that the clue token does is let you re-roll, or not re-roll, but turn magnifying glasses into successes. So in the dark, sorry, out of luck.
Yep.
Are you trying to pick the lock in the dark? Sorry, you only get as many as you're good at.
Yeah, those are the worst.
Yeah, because there's...
Try to solve a puzzle in the dark.
There's puzzle things, and whatever skill the puzzle takes is how many turns you get to solve the puzzle. However, if you have clue tokens, you can spend those for extra turns attempting to figure out the puzzle.
Another token is the fire token, which is actually on the backside of the darkness. If an investigator moves into a space or performs an action in a space with the fire, they take 1 face down damage. If a monster starts its activation in a fire space, it takes a damage. To extinguish the fire, you have to spend an action and test your agility, and each success allows you to discard 1 fire in your space or in spaces moved into. The fire spreads at the beginning of the mythos phase, and what that does is you place a fire in an adjacent space.
Okay. So, can you give me a fire token?
Oh, I'll give you like 3 of them if you want.
So, beginning of the mythos phase, you said beginning, right?
Yes.
There, fire spread. That's in an adjacent space. As collectively, you could have gone over there too. When Jeb was talking about extinguishing, I can take an action, extinguish, move. If there's one in there, extinguish again.
But it depends on how many successes you get.
Yeah, with
agility.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry. Assuming that I had already rolled the agility, it's basically just moving in and taking them off if you were able to. And then the monsters, at least they were nice enough to hurt the monsters too with the fire. That was kind of sweet of them, I guess.
Take every little bit.
Yeah.
All right, the next thing are the secret passages.
Ooh.
And these tokens will be placed whenever the app tells you to. And what they do is connect rooms, and you consider the spaces adjacent for movement. So if the old man wanted to move, he could go 1, 2. So 2 movement would get him there, and he could have just gone through the door if he wanted to, but he would have had to go through a monster.
You have to step onto this? Wouldn't it be 1, and then I still have a move? I'm in this room with the trapdoor. Isn't this 1?
Yeah, but I thought you started here.
I moved it.
Oh, I thought it was...
To show the example.
Oh, I was like 1, 2 is what I was counting.
I was trying to get it so he was already there. But okay.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Now we're on the same page.
Yes, we are.
All right. And then the very last thing that we got to talk about are puzzles. And these are pretty cool.
These are one of the coolest things in the game.
Yep. There's 3 different types of puzzles. And when you attempt a puzzle, you get movements equal to the number of your skill value. So the app will tell you which skill to use.
Right. So for instance, I come to this thing. It ends up being a puzzle. The puzzle comes up on the screen. It could be one of those little puzzles where you have to slide the tiles around to make a picture.
There's some that are like blocks that you're trying to get a block to a certain position.
Right, like and so you slide things around until you can get, block A over to the other side of the board. And what's the other kind they have? There's one other one.
Can't remember what the third one is.
There's almost, I want to say there's almost like a circuit one where you have to connect the stuff right or whatever stuff. Regardless, it will tell you what skill it takes to solve this puzzle. You look at your investigator's card. Let's say it was a magical one, right? And you needed lore to be able to solve the puzzle. I would look at Carson's lore 4. So that means I can interact with that puzzle 4 times.
Yep.
Okay? So, in the case of, like, we've all seen the little puzzle things where you slide the tile trying to make a different picture. Every time I slide a tile, it counts as an interaction with that puzzle. So I can slide 4 times. And if I solve it, great. If not, I have to take a whole nother action or wait till my next turn when I have a new action to attempt it again.
The cool thing with the app is that if you don't solve it, then you close it, and then the next time you open it, it's going to look the same way. It doesn't
refresh it. Yeah, because honestly, if you had... There's some puzzles where if all you have is a 2, you wouldn't be able to finish it in 2, no matter, like, they just... You can't. You physically can't. So it leaves wherever you left off. Oh, I know what it is. It had like some of the ones with the numbers, like put the numbers in order.
Oh, I remember those.
Yeah, those were tough.
Those are the toughest.
Like it tells you, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but you'll have like, there'd be 4 numbers here, and you kind of guess what they are, and it'll tell you, okay, 2 of the numbers are right, but they're not in the right position.
Yeah.
So you have to do that whole thing and make sure that you get all the numbers correct and all the numbers in the right space. Anyhow, that's an aside. Those are fun. So I would interact with the puzzle 4 times. If I had some clue tokens, that I can use that as an extra interaction with the puzzle, as many as I want, up to however many I have. And then once you solve the puzzle, the app lets you know. It goes like that. Did you like that sound effect?
Exactly like that.
It's like that.
I couldn't tell you were Mickey for a second. I thought you were an app.
The app, I know. So, and then you get really excited that you solved it, and yeah, and then it gives you something or opens something that you really, really needed.
And like we said earlier, if you're in a room that's dark, or if you're in a space that's dark, and it has the puzzle, you can't spend the investigator tokens to help increase the number of interactions.
Darkness shut that off.
Yep. So that's everything I have for the notes. I think that covers pretty much everything.
That is pretty... There's some of the stuff we talked about is a little more obscure than other things. They don't happen that much.
Fire doesn't come up too much.
Fire doesn't come up too much. Actually, the darkness kind of does.
Sometimes,
but you just real quick have to look at it and be like, oh, I think as many times as we played this, I think we might have used a barricade once to try to, because we, like, the app said, oh, you hear something, so we played it safe.
Yeah.
So there's some things that you won't, at least initially, probably do that much. You might run into scenarios where, oh, wait a second, they really want me to do this because these things are coming left and right, or whatever the case may be. But I think the most important thing is this really was strange in terms of trying to show you stuff because we kept referencing the app. And because it's such a big part, if some of this stuff didn't make sense, either read the rules, come back and listen to us, and it might make more sense, or even better, watch 15-20 minutes of gameplay, and you'll see the interaction with the app, and you should see a lot of the things that we're talking about, if you don't see some of the things that we're talking about, forward to maybe halfway through the game if you can figure out where that about is, because the game doesn't, like, it builds up. The tension builds up in the game. So at the beginning, you're doing a lot of exploration and finding out clues and things like that. You're not. It's not coming out guns swinging with 14 monsters coming at you, because you would be dead too quick.
Yep.
But it starts to ramp up in some manner really fast when the computer knows you're getting close, or if you're taking too much time. It does some wacky stuff if you're like, well, you've been in here a while, maybe I should kill you now.
That room's now on fire.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Yeah, well, I'll just burn down the house on you. We don't care. Anyways, that was the best that we could figure out, I think, to go over the mechanics of the game and try to tell you about the app, because since the app actually works with playing a game, it's not like you can say, okay, app, let me show him this example right now. So anyways, I mean, we always encourage you to watch a little bit of gameplay anyways, and that's what we'll recommend again.
Yep. And we've got a 3-player game, so you can see 3 people try to win.